Alright, so Insidious Chapter 2 is the sequel to Insidious, of course. It takes place right after the events of the first one, picking up right there, except for a little flashback at the beginning. But, yes, it continues the story of the Lambert family. There's something not right with Josh, and they're trying to figure out what's going on, and they bring in an old friend of Elise's to help. And we also get to explore not only Josh's past, but his mother's past, and some things that happened when Josh was a child. And it deepens the characters, you know. And I have mixed feelings about this movie. There's some really good things in this movie, and there's some things that to this day make me scratch my head as to why they made that kind of decision with it. So first and foremost, this movie starts off with a flashback, right? Flashback to 1986, 1 year before I was born, I might add. And we see young Josh, now recast with a different actor because the other one was too old, question mark. This came out, but the first one came out in 2010, this came out in 2013, so 3 years later. If Dalton can look close to the same age in this, why can't, I don't know. I didn't mean to shake the camera. Stay still. So, yeah, we get a flashback, and you have, we meet Carl, who's one of the few new characters we meet in this film. And I like Carl. I wish we could have gotten more of him in this, after this film, but for reasons he states in this, like, spoiler alert, chapters 3 and 4 are prequels. And he says in this, he states in this film that he hadn't made contact with Elise in years. So it makes sense that he's not in any of the prequels. But, no, excuse me, I wish I could have seen him more, because I like this character. Yeah. And Carl calls Elise, and we get this, the whole thing with Elise is there, and trying to figure out what's going on with Josh. And then we get a scene that wasn't mentioned in the first one at all, I might add, where he gets up, and he walks over, points to the door opens by itself. And we find out later in the film what that's about, but it's very like, huh, I like this whole opening scene, except for one thing. So, they got a younger actress to play the younger version of Elise, and they decided to dub Lin Shaye's voice onto her. I'm sorry, but I'm guessing she was in her 40s here, right? If she was in her 60s at this point, late 60s during this point. A 40-year-old woman with the voice of a 60-something-year-old woman doesn't work. It's that uncanny valley where we know whose voice it is, and it's on someone else's, it's coming out of someone else's mouth. It doesn't work because it's not her voice. It's that uncanny valley. Just it sounds weird. I get what they were trying to do, but one, you don't always sound the way, when you're older, you don't always sound the same way as when you were younger. So they could have just had kept the actress's voice, but yeah, and then yeah, it's a that disconnect for me. It just doesn't work. And then cut to back to the ending of the first one, and Josh is there, and he's like, I'm right here, and then, but the thing is, some people might, because I was watching this, when Josh reacts to Lisa's stats, and might say, oh, Patrick Wilson isn't really doing a very good job here, but I'm sitting there going, actually, no, he's doing a good job, because, there's not a lot of motion in this scene with him. Oh no, Elise, he seems very, like he's acting like he's concerned. And, you don't want to ever come across like you're acting. But here, you kind of do, because it's not Josh. From the end of the last film, it's the bride in black. So, yeah, I think it works, actually. And then we have a very unnecessary scene in which Renee she's being talked to by the police. And I say unnecessary as like they're discussing about Elise's death and then there's fingerprints and then there might be Josh's fingerprints. This does come back one time later in the film where she gets a phone call from the cop guy saying, oh, they're not Josh's fingerprints, thought you should know, but we're not closing anything, you know. Cop never comes back after that. And I think the only reason why they put this scene in there is so that, because if they didn't, people would be like, well, how come the cops weren't involved with this? And so there's that, but also, it just doesn't go anywhere. The cop, if you had the cop part of the investigation throughout the film, and he sees the stuff going down, that's one thing. But he's in one scene at the beginning of the film, then a voice cameo towards the end of the film. To let him know that, or middle, whatever, to let him know that it wasn't Josh's fingerprints. Which we already, well, you couldn't have, well, I guess maybe you could have thought it would have come out because it was him strangling him. So the weird part that it's not his, you know, fingerprints. I don't know. But, so, sorry, people outside the door. So yeah, Tucker and Specs, they're at Elise's house, and they are directed by the spirit of Elise to her little room where she has videotapes, and they find the videotape of Josh when he was a kid, and they see something in the background, but we don't see what it is until later. I'm going to go ahead and spoil it now. It's older Josh, current time Josh, in the background. Would a regular video camera pick that up? And did she know about this the entire time? There's some older gentleman in his late 30s on this tape. And when she met Josh as an adult, hey, I saw you on a videotape. Why didn't that come to her mind? Why didn't she bring that? Because she was there in the first one, she came there and then she was dismissed. And then when she came back, why didn't she bring the tape with her? Hey, I want to show you something. That's you. I don't know. And it gets confusing because they end up calling Carl, right? I don't remember how that happens. They do end up calling Carl. And, because they need someone that can talk to Elise. So they call Carl because he has these dice that have letters on them, rolls them, and he speaks to spirits, right? So, this is one part that I'm really confused on. And I haven't really been able to get any clarification on this. He tries to talk to Elise, and there's nothing, and then they start talking to what they assume is Elise. And eventually this leads them to, so they are led to our Mother of Angels, or whatever it's called. It's a hospital that Lorraine, the mom, used to work at when she was younger. And we get flashbacks showing that Josh was also there, and that patient named Parker Crane, who was like in a coma, popped up in his seat and stared at Josh. And that's our connection to the story of Parker Crane. And this leads us to Parker Crane's house, which no one has lived in since he died or his mother died. Or see, I always find it improbable in places. No one is. They find, we gotta go to this person's house and no one's living in it. Bullshit. I understand the Myers house. That's like a legend in Haddonfield. Why no one would live there, no one would want to buy it till Halloween 6, which is still kind of stupid. I understand why no one would live there, and that would be derelict. It would be, but this house has not only is no one living in it, it still has every piece of furniture, every doll, everything they ever owned still in that house. How is that possible? It doesn't make any sense to me. You know? It just doesn't make any sense. And when they get there, it's revealed that it's not Elise talking to them, it's the ghost of Parker's mother. So, did Elise ever actually talk to them? Or was it always Parker's mom that led them there the entire time? I'm willing to concede that it was Elise talking to them in her house. But that once they got to Our Lady of Angels, or whatever it's called, she wasn't able to go with them for some reason, and then was taken over by Parker's mom and led them to the house. I don't know. I really don't know. But this leads them to realize that Parker is the one inside Josh. This is stupid revelation number one. Stupid revelation number one to me. The bride in black is an elderly man who used to dress up as a bride because his mother made him do it and kill people. And he committed suicide and tried to take over Josh's body because he wanted his childhood back. Stupid revelation number two. He wanted his childhood back. Why is that stupid? Because he still takes over adult Josh. If he wanted his childhood back, why was he still going after Josh as an adult? That makes no sense. Like he was after Josh because he wanted his childhood back. So why is he still going after Josh? Josh is almost 40 years old. Why would he go after him? It makes no sense. None at all. And somehow he's now deteriorating in Josh's body, which I guess a dead soul can't stay in a living body. That makes sense a little bit, but it's confusing to me, I guess. I don't know. So Carl, Tucker, and Specs have a plan. They get the rest of the family out of the house. They have Lorraine get Renee out of the house. The kids are at a friend's house for the time being. And so Carl goes in under the guise of trying to talk to Josh. And while there, Tucker and Specs are in the van, and they're going to try to drug Josh, knock him out, and then deal with him somehow. I guess it's not made perfectly clear, but doesn't matter because Josh Parker, whatever, figures out because his mother talks to him. And I know I've been omitting stuff with the family, but it's your basic jump scare, music thing. You know, the important plot points. The jump scare stuff isn't really that important. It's really good. It works. But, like, there's jump scares with the baby thing and Josh trying to communicate with Renee, which you know is happening. It's nothing too important. I'm going through the plot points that are really important. So if you sit and you want to type in, you miss some stuff, I'm going through some of the important stuff. The jump scare stuff, I don't need to point out every jump scare, all right? I'm just saying. So, I do like this, though, this scene, because he's like, "Are you trying to play with your dice?" "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "It's okay. Mother told me about the dice." "Oh, I didn't realize you were talking to her this morning." "Oh, yes, she told me a lot about you." Then he notices Josh has something behind your back. He goes, "What do you have behind your back?" "Why don't you ask your dice what I have behind my back?" So he goes, "What does what does Parker Crane have behind his back?" And you can see in his face, oh, he knows who I am. He drops it, says knife, he attacks him, and he apparently kills him. This transports Parker into the further where he meets the real Josh, and they come into contact with Elise. Elise tells Carl that she was curious because Carl doesn't belong here. And so they journey through the further. We get some more things with Parker's past, and this is another thing that I think just... So apparently, Parker's mother wanted a daughter so badly, and after Parker's dad passed away or something, that she started dressing Parker like a girl and calling him Marilyn. This is the only thing I don't really care about in this film. It's like, it's not realistic to me, alright? Now, there's people out there with real mental disabilities. I know, I'm one of them. But, I just don't think there's anything that, I know you're saying, well, realistic in a horror film about ghosts and spirits and spooks. Yeah, you're right, but it always seems weird, and I've seen it before in other shows and movies where, oh, she wanted a daughter. You know, Sleepaway Camp is a good example, right? Which you could say they stole it from that. But, like, how would they, like, even the plot hole in that is that why, like, at the age that Angela is in that film, spoiler alert, she should be hitting puberty already. Her voice should be changing, unless she did something to her voice box. To his voice box. So, yeah, dressing your child up like a girl, I would never dress up my son like a girl. You know, the only thing I would support, if my son came to me and said, you know what, I think I identify as a girl, it'd be weird, but I would support it. I'm that kind of person where I'm open to it, you know? And like, if, you know, he later in life, when he's older, wants to have be a woman, fine. But it'd be weird because I'd have a daughter, but I don't know. I don't think he's like that, but you never know. Kids are quiet. You never know. But anyway, off of that subject, I just don't see dressing your kid up like a girl, your son up like a girl, because you want a daughter. I should ask him, hey, what if I decided I don't want a son anymore, I want a daughter, and I just dressed you up like a girl? What'd you think? See what his reaction is, you know? But anyway, yeah, that's what we find out. We find out that, you know, the whole thing with the girl and the stuff, yeah. And so, because we need a climax, for some reason, Renee and Lorraine go back to the house. Now, they haven't heard from Carl, Tuggers, and Specs yet because, you know, Josh, quote-unquote, killed Carl and knocked out Tucker and Specs. Why he didn't kill them, I don't know, but they're knocked out, so they haven't heard from them. I don't think that's a very good sign, ladies. Should that prompt you to go back home? No, but they do because we need a climax. And because we need to add to that climax, most conveniently, when the stuff's going down, the kids come home. And the baby disappears again. Like, she's prevalent for most of this film, and then when it's time for climax, she's just gone. So, Dalton decides he's going to go back into the further and help his father out. And Carl. And he does, and Elise tells Carl, you're not dead. Which is why I was confused why you were here. Which is, you know, a way to keep the character around if you need him in further sequels, but also to have him there to help Josh, even though he's not much of a help. But eventually, you know, Parker gets knocked out. I think something happens. Because then he wakes up and he's Josh again, and we have this whole thing when they hug. And then Carl erases Josh's and Dalton's memories. Josh, again, Dalton's memories. And, yeah. That's the end of the story so far. We do have a little tacked on end scene I'll talk about, but as an end to the Lambert story, I think it's satisfying. It's not the end because Patrick Wilson is coming back to direct the fifth Insidious, and then it's going to follow Dalton in college. Now, I need to stress this. This is years after Patrick Wilson went on record as saying, the Lambert families has been through enough. Their story is done. Well, if we can make money off of it, why not, right? So we get one of the most frustrating things about this movie, the end scene. And we cut to Tucker and Specs going to this person's house, and we get a very young Jenna Ortega, which I'd like, wait, that's Jenna Ortega. She was in The Babysitter 2. And some Disney Channel, what's it called? Is it Gabby the Unsittables or something like that? I don't know. I don't watch Disney Channel. But, not anymore. Unless there's a good Disney movie on. But, sorry, you can see my cleavage there. But, and she, little Jenna Ortega asks, who's the old lady? And they're like, huh? And then you see Elise go, Spirit of Elise, right? She goes in the house and says, we need to talk about Allison. Allison. She goes in and she's like, Allison. And she looks in the corner and she sees something I don't think we see because I didn't see anything. She goes, oh my God. Then it ends. And the most frustrating thing is they've never come back to it. They've never picked up on this cliffhanger. I've been waiting and they haven't. And I'll get to it when I review the fourth one, but I figured they set up characters to come back in a fifth installment, right? There's a certain character in the fourth film that they set up as a sort of replacement for Elise. I won't get into it, but she could come back and she could be the new Elise and she could take over, and also Carl, right? But they never come back to it. And now with the announcement that Patrick Wilson is taking over and it's going to be Dalton again, and it's just like, but what about the cliffhanger? You guys have never come back to that. And I know Jenna Ortega is older now. You can get a new little actress to play the character. But I always wanted to come back to that. And we never have. Because 3 and 4 are prequels. And it frustrates me to my core. But as it stands, Insidious Chapter 2 is a great follow-up to the first film. The jump scares are still done very well. It's James Wan, you know. Much like the first one, there's no cat or plant or... I mean, the baby thing going off is a little bit cliche of something, but there's a point to it. Because I think it was Josh doing that. But, yeah, it's a very good film. I'm going to give it 8 out of 10. I don't think it's as good as the first one. I should say this was better than the first one. But I'm giving it 8 out of 10. I don't think it's as good, but it's still a good movie. Okay? So what are your thoughts on Insidious Chapter 2? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I've been Scotty, and I'll see you in the next one.